Welcome to the Light Board meeting for November 29th, 2023. My boy's 17th birthday. They're getting
What?
big.
17?
Happy birthday.
I know.
Holy camole.
Exactly. And first thing we want to do is call to order. And next is going over any minutes. I didn't see minutes get passed around this time. Warren, is there anything? Oh,
Sorry, I had myself muted.
Yeah.
No, we do not have any minutes to vote on, but I just received minutes from Karen for an August meeting yesterday. I will be sending these around to people today and hope that everybody will review them so we could vote on them at our next meeting in a couple weeks.
Excellent. All right. And on our meeting schedule for the rest of the year is 2 meetings in December, the 13th and the 20th. And then we'll be into Q1 with our normal schedule plus a second meeting each month on Wednesdays. Do you have a question, Alice?
I do. I just want to let everyone know I'm not able to join us on the 20th. I'll be traveling.
Okay. I'll make a quick little note. All right, so our first.
Brian, could I ask if we could get meeting invites just so they're on our schedule for those meetings,
Yeah,
as well as possibly Zoom links, given that it doesn't appear like we're going to be moving to a hybrid meeting in that time frame.
yeah, I think you've asked for that before, the meeting invite. I'll make sure that gets done. I'll put a little exclamation point next to it, because that would be helpful. All right, any other questions? I don't see any other hands going up. So our first topic today is Chariot Solar. And Laura, would you like to take this?
Yes, I will. I did just want to make a couple introductory remarks. You all have a copy, obviously, of the agenda, so you can see what items we're hoping to cover today. And I think what the Light Plant would like to make sure we leave this meeting with today is a clear understanding of which tariff sheets you want to see at the December 13th meeting, because we will run out of time to implement rates if we don't have those voted on by the December 13th meeting. We can't wait until the 20th. So we can debate today all we want about what you want to see, but by the time we leave this meeting, we just need to understand exactly which tariffs you want to see so that we can prepare them for you and you can review them and vote on them at the December 13th meeting.
All right, we'll do our best.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen if I can.
And Laura,
Yes.
you're going to share a presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, if you could at the end of the meeting, make sure to forward that presentation to the board so we have the materials, that'd be great. Same with any other presentations.
Okay. Yep, we can do that. Okay, so I'm trying to share and I'm getting advanced sharing options. I don't want that. What can you guys see? Can you see anything?
I don't see anything. I actually have the ability to share, which is unusual. So do I need to allow you to share?
Carol,
No.
do you have to, is there something we have to do to
No, you're listed as a co-host. Carol is listed as the host and you're listed as a co-host.
When you click the share, what does it say, Laura?
it says it pops up with a dialog box that says advanced sharing options, who can share and who can start sharing when someone else is sharing.
It sounds like you're in the sharing permissions, not the actual share screen button.
Okay, but if I push the share screen button, aha, you're so brilliant, Jason. Okay, can you now see a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, so the first topic, which I hope will be brief or fairly brief, is we would like the board to vote to recommend to the town manager to move forward with a replacement power supply deal that is in place of a project, a contract we already executed. So just for some background, in July of 2019, CMLP signed a 20-year purchase power contract with NextEra. It was designed to support the construction of a new 50 megawatt solar project in Hinsdale, New Hampshire, which was to commence providing power on January 1st, 2024. At the same time, we also signed a 6-year purchase power contract with NextEra for nuclear energy from Seabrook, New Hampshire. And we refer to this energy as shaped nuclear because it was designed to provide what a solar plant doesn't provide. So these graphs to the right, you see the yellow bars. That's what a typical solar output would look like in the month of July. So the power from Seabrook, the nuclear, was going to be the blue bars. So you see you get less when the solar is producing more and more when the solar is producing less, so that you get this fixed block of energy from hour ending 8 to hour ending 23. And in the winter, it's even more valuable because you're not getting as much solar output, so you're getting more nuclear in the winter. So that's what we mean by shaped, was that we were going to get these blue bars of the nuclear. Late this year, NextEra informed Energy New England that they would not build the solar project due to economics. And they proposed to replace the new solar with existing wind from the Granite Wind project. And they also wanted to convert the nuclear from a shaped product to a flat 7x16. So we'd start getting nuclear in these yellow slots as well. We'll explain why that's not a good thing. So if we look at the term comparison, the original deal was for a 20-year solar purchase, which is these orange bars, okay, paired with what was originally a 6-year nuclear project and was extended to a 12-year nuclear product. So you can see you get more nuclear in the first 12 years, and then it stops, but you continue to get the solar till 2043. The replacement proposal they've proposed is that we would still get the exact same nuclear, the same blue bars, but the renewable portion, instead of coming from solar, would come from wind. And it would start off, it's not a flat over the term product. It would start off kind of in a small volume. These are volumes. And then it would build up in the 2030s. And then when the nuclear falls off, you would continue to get the Granite solar, but the deal would end 2 years earlier than the prior deal. So that sort of sums up kind of what the different product looks like that is being proposed from the original. This chart to the right shows what CMLP's renewable not renewable, our power supply portfolio that comes from non-carbon emitting sources. You can see a large chunk of that is nuclear over time. And you can see that we are up around 50 to 75% from now until 2030. During that time, we have no statutory requirement to meet any minimums. But starting in 2030, the MLPs negotiated with the state of Massachusetts to comply with basically an alternative renewable portfolio standard called the GGES. So in 2030, CMLP will be obligated to show that 50% of its power supply comes from non-carbon emitting sources. In that year, we plan to have enough to meet that. But as you can see, some of our resources begin to drop off, so that without this light green portion, the requirement, which is the blue bar, would actually be higher than what we have existing in the portfolio. And what this replacement proposal allows us to do, because it is shown that the light green, is it allows us to meet that GGES through 2034. We still need to find more supply for the 2035 and beyond timeframe. But it essentially is a benefit to helping us meet that GGES. This chart shows no load growth. So to the extent we do experience load growth, we may not, the portfolio may not be sufficient to meet the GGES, in which case we would need to find more renewable options. And E&E's been telling us that, you know, there aren't a lot of new renewable projects or non-carbon emitting projects being are offered out there in the market or being seen being built. And they also claim that some of the best spots for renewable in New England have already been taken up. Like this Granite Wind is on the, you know, ridge top of a mountain chain. And obviously that's very good for wind power, but there aren't all that many geologic, you know, formations that would be able to replicate that. So to sum the good and the bad, the good is that the replacement proposal is actually economically on par with the original Chariot deal. Initially, we reported to you that it was economically inferior. And since that time, we've been working with E&E to adjust some of the economic assumptions in their analysis. And they agree with us now that it's not worse. It's better. It's on par to better. It depends what discount rate you use, because it looks at, you know, future streams of cash flow over time. But it's basically very similar. Wind provides nearly twice the number of megawatt hours during the winter than solar does, and the winters when we see high volatility of prices in New England, so that's helpful. It allows CMLP to meet its GGES minimum from 2030 to 2034. And the replacement proposal deal also includes a right of first refusal option if Granite extends the project life beyond 2041, which could be beneficial. You know, the bad is that a new 50 megawatt solar project in New Hampshire is not going to get built, at least not based on this deal, which is unfortunate. You know, CMLP and Concord in general have wanted to be on the forefront of promoting and economically supporting new build out of non-carbon emitting sources in New England. And by not building this project, you know, we are set back a little bit in that goal. But it does share these other beneficial features. So that's the end of my summary of this. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. If not, we would be looking for, again, a motion from the board to propose to the town manager to move forward with this replacement proposal that NextEra has offered.
Great. John.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. This is very helpful. I guess a couple comments. I just, you know, this is kind of one of the first times that I'm participating in a supply decision. And I just feel like as a board, this is probably one of the most important things that we do. It's really kind of one of the areas where we really can influence the, you know, direction of the light plant. And I feel like to some degree, the information that's presented from my perspective isn't really enough to allow us to make the type of informed decision that I would want to make. I would want to better understand kind of, you know, what are the full range of alternatives out there. You know, some of this would be, you know, generally, you know, purchases from kind of ISO New England. Obviously, that isn't going to achieve the light plant's renewable energy objectives, but I think that that's a useful baseline, as well as maybe a alternative understanding or alternative perspective in terms of what new solar can cost. I hear what E&E is saying in terms of there isn't a lot of project development, renewable project development right now. I think that really is, you know, a reflection of kind of a really adverse market conditions. We're seeing a lot of projects being canceled. I don't think that that's, you know, necessarily going to be continued into the future. And we're talking about, you know, the value here is a need in the 2030, addressing a need in the 2030 timeframe. And that's, you know, 6 years from today. There's a lot of project development that can occur in the intervening 6 years. So I just feel like it would be really helpful to kind of and be more than happy to kind of provide additional comments, Laura, if you're open to that, to you know, make sure that the board has the information they need to make these decisions in the future. So just wanted to offer those comments up.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, John. You know, we're somewhat hamstrung by not being able to share in a public session what the prices are associated with these. What I will tell you is that, based on my calculations, residential solar would be about twice as expensive as what this deal is with the ITC, and 3 times as expensive without the ITC. So
Another good comparison is the price that we charge for generation. Because that I use that as a proxy for the average cost of our portfolio. So is this contract significantly higher than the almost 9 cents that, sorry, I need my glasses here. Energy is 8.8 cents. So is this contract significantly more than, I mean, we don't want to talk specific pricing, but is it, you know, above 10 cents? Is it below the 8.8 that is the average of our portfolio? I do like that we get those years of 2034, and I think it was 2035 where we had expanded the security of our contracted portfolio. Wind, we have some other wind contracts, but I do know wind does do better in the winter, and that is something we're looking for with all the heat pump installations and others, so forth. But here, I'll let you take over and talk.
So I had this slide in there, John, but the feedback from the test audience that I showed this to was that it was just way too confusing. But you're the one person, or maybe more than one, that I think would be interested in that. I mean, one thing to understand, John, is that when we first negotiated this deal, the forward price curve in 2019 was much, much lower. So this contract is in the money. And so the replacement proposal they gave us is also in the money. So we're not paying the current forward curve price. The forward curve has risen from like 4 to 5 cents to 6 to 7 cents. But we would still be paying sort of the lower end of that. And what this chart shows you is that the original deal's in blue. Okay, this was the original PPA price. And even though this is in dollars per megawatt hour, I've taken that off the access because I'm not allowed to share that information. But just on a relative basis, okay, this is the PPA price for the original deal in blue, solid blue. The polka dotted blue is what the current forward market curve is for the original shape, okay? So the orange shows you, here's the value.
Would that be
we're going to pay? Oops.
Can I just ask a question there, Laura? When you say forward market, is that forward market for ISO New England null energy without any value to Class 1 RECs?
That is correct. Sorry, I'm flailing around here because I hit the wrong button. So yeah, the chart basically says that the market values are for emitting power. So you can see we're basically getting a non-carbon emitting project for less than the market value by this much, by the orange much. Now, when the nuclear falls off in 2035, the situation, the economics split, where now here's what you're paying and here's what it's worth. Okay, but what it's worth is for the emitting. So this space between the solid red and the polka dotted red is what you're paying for the REC. And that REC, I will tell you, this value is about 2 cents. So you almost can't say no to this deal, because if we say no, we immediately jump from paying the solid line, which is the new one is the red, to paying this polka dotted line. You give up all this opportunity. Now, there's nothing to say the current forward curve will not drop, but it was executed at a time when it was much more reasonable. So, in my view, the risk is less of you contracting today because you're not paying the current forward curve. You're paying what it was in 2019. Does that help?
Yeah, that does. It's very helpful, and particularly expressing it in terms of the rec opportunity cost is very useful. What's the volume of this deal? What portion of the portfolio, roughly?
So it will be, all right, just gonna get to that slide. You're looking at in the early years, 10 to 15,000 a year, which is about 6%.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that chart, though I understand it is very technical, was very helpful. Because this is really a contract for, it's two separate energy contracts bundled into one. And it's when the nuclear drops off, you can really see the pricing of that wind being so much higher than the nuclear. But I still think I think it's worth doing. I think this is a good deal. It gets us a few more years of contracted power. I agree with John that right now the opportunities are going away, but that over the horizon that we've already got contracted, that other opportunities will come up. And I think this price with the nuclear is good enough that we could act now. But any future opportunities, I'd want to make sure that it's helping us maintain our 8.8 cents on average.
Yeah, this will definitely do that, Brian.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Do you need a vote, Laura, on this?
Yes, please.
Okay. As chair, I can't make the motion, right? Alice, you're my procedures person. Do you mind making a motion to enter into this power purchase agreement?
Yeah. I move that we recommend to move forward with the Chariot Solar replacement proposal as presented at the meeting on November 29th. That will replace a solar project with a combination of nuclear power and wind.
Great. And Warren, do you mind giving me a second?
Second,
All right. John,
Yes,
Warren,
yes.
Alice,
Yes,
Bianca. I'm not sure if you are
in the car.
Yeah. So I agree.
If you can hear me,
Yeah.
yes.
Great. And I agree as well. So it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we will move on to the next topic, which is the 2024 operating forecast.
And Matt is going to take over from here for a little bit.
Excellent.
All right. Laura, would you share the PDF of the budget and go to page 30, please? So last week, or at the last meeting, we reviewed
page 30 as printed or in the PDF?
They should be both the same.
Well, okay.
Laura, you're not sharing. So at the last meeting, we reviewed the operating forecast for 2024. I don't have a big presentation to do for you. I just wanted to show you a couple of things that were changed in the updated version that I was sent. In the previous version, this chart was not updated for the new year, so I updated that, and somebody had requested percentages. So this provides those percentages for your viewing pleasure. And then Laura, would you go to page 80, please? So the data on the debt pages was correct, but this chart was not correct. So I updated this. The big change is in the green section. I think I only had 5 million in here for the middle school and solar. And then I think at the last meeting, I had said that the main station battery was actually supposed to be the middle school one, but this has all been corrected, and this is accurate now to match with the data on the debt schedule. And then as far as Bianca's question, that she asked before we started recording, I believe it was where should her focus be, and what is important to take away from this. When I came to CMLP, I had us change the terminology from budget to forecast, and the reason for that is, you know, the rest of the town is required to maintain a budget and stay within. They're legally obligated to stay within the budget. We aren't held by the same, governed by the same laws. So this is just more of what our expectation is for 2024. If you really wanted to zero in on something, the big ones would be the rate of return or the net income pieces are the things that I would zero in on. So page 5 would be a good one, Laura. This is the net income that was on the presentation at the last meeting. So with that, unless there's any further questions, I think the agenda says something about an approval. What does it say? To recommend the budget for the town manager.
John.
Yeah, just a background question. I realize that we went through this last time, but just trying to understand the workup in terms of the telecom and you know, the assumptions regarding net income, and I guess I'm a little bit of a view that and another question I have, Matt, if you can deal with a little bit of juggling here, is are we bound by the same requirements in terms of profit or net income for the telecom business as we are for the light plant, for kind of the electricity business? Because I would view these as two very different businesses with different risks, recognizing that we actually, you know, we're a monopoly service provider for electricity service, whereas there's obviously competitors for telecom. And, you know, I think a reasonable principle would be, you know, in a more competitive market, you'd be expecting to realize a higher return. And just some comments and some thoughts. Thank you.
So the answer to that is I don't know. I've done some research trying to review Mass General Law, as well as reached out to state agencies, and it's kind of the telecom piece is kind of in the wild west. There isn't a whole lot of regulation. There used to be, but then one of the departments at the state level changed and is no longer oversees the telecom business. So it's kind of unclear, to be honest. I guess I probably should reach out again and see if I can get another clarification on whether like the DPU has any regulation over the telecom side.
And
we currently do not report data to the DPU for telecom on our DPU report. That is strictly the electric side.
yeah, I don't know the specific answer to the regulations, but I do know that the startup investment that the town made into the telecom business, once the telecom, you know, if there is any rate of return, first is going to be put towards reinvestment into the business. Second is going to be paying down that $1.9 million of debt. So the idea that there would be a very large return is something for the future. I don't see it happening in the next 10 years. just because of that legacy debt can always be paid down should we have a large return. And probably would be, because the electric side of the business would like that money back. Warren, hey, John, did I spark any other questions that you want to follow up on?
No, I guess, I mean, I would be interested in terms of whether any other board members share my perspective here. And I'm not suggesting that the light plant at the end of the day make more money. I'm suggesting that if they were making more money on the telecom side, it could be used for, other purposes to, reduce costs possibly on the electricity side.
Yeah.
Supporting conservation investments, for example.
I think we're trying to separate the two businesses. So that idea of one supporting the other is actually what we're trying to reverse with that 1.9 million. Warren.
Yeah, and to John's point about telecom versus electric, it would be nice to see these numbers shown as a percentage of sales, because the telecom business is a smaller business, so we wouldn't expect to be able to generate the same amount of income in terms as the electric business, but it would be nice to see the telecom business, in a sense, generating a greater year-to-year percentage net income amount. But the main thing I wanted to ask here is I'd like a sense of a longer historic time frame here, if this could be put into context for me, because when I look at this, it looks like our net income for this year and projected for next year looks very good. But is this few years typical of the past, or is all of this a lower net income than we were getting in the years, say, from 2012 to 2019?
I'll let Matt answer that.
Yeah, I don't recall specifically. I think there were years in that time period that had a greater rate of return. I think there was maybe a couple years where we were butting up against our statutory limit of 8%. But I would say generally, I think that the years in that time frame that you gave were a little bit more than what you're seeing here.
Okay, thank you.
And in the pandemic in 2020, that was a very unusual thing to see it go negative. And usually it's pretty steady if you look at those prior years. Alice.
So I'm really interested in John's point here, because it is clearly these are two different businesses with different risk profiles. But I'm wondering not just about the regulatory controls on it, because it is owned and operated, it's started by the light plant, which laws it must comply with, whether they are the rate of return required by the light plant or are they independent as its own entity. But I'm also curious to understand what other light plants are doing. Like, I think, doesn't Shrewsbury also have a telecom department or IT, whatever they call it, within the light plant? I'd be curious to know what advice they're receiving and what they're doing with their reporting. And I think it's an interesting concept, and I think it resonates with me as something we should be looking at.
Yeah,
So I don't know the answer.
Shrewsbury does offer, I believe it's cable and telecom, cable TV and telecom services. So yeah, I should reach out to them, and they're pretty analogous to us as far as size and what they do.
Yeah. It seems like there's some interest on the board on this. Could I ask Matt to remember that we should bring this topic up in Q1 about how to separate the businesses in this forecast, and what that would look like, how, get an update from you on what you found in any regulations sometime in Q1.
Okay.
Great. Alice, do you have another question, or you're all set? Oh, I think you're muted.
No other questions, and thank you, John, for bringing this up, because I think it's an interesting concept, and we ought to consider it.
All right. I don't have any specific concerns about the budget. It is a forecast. It's, you know, it's our best guess at what's going to happen. But you know, I know that this is all weather dependent for sales volume and other things. So I'm comfortable with it. I'd like to get a motion to approve the budget. Alice, do you mind helping me out?
Unmute. I move that we approve the operating forecast as presented and updated in the meeting on November 29th, 2023 for the 2024 operating forecast.
Great.
I second.
Thank you, Warren. John,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
Bianca.
Yes.
Great. And I agree as well. I think this is great. All right.
The budget forecast, I have to say, have the presentation, both in the slide deck and also the book, have increased in readability and understandably tenfold. And
Yes.
it's just great. So I really want to say thank you, Matt, for the work that goes into being able to present this succinctly for us.
Yes.
And for the
You're
sound.
you're welcome.
It's
You're
great.
welcome. And think Laura puts a lot of effort into it too. I appreciate her help.
Yep. The whole team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a great resource for understanding the utility and all its parts.
Yes.
All right. So I guess we're ready to move on to the next topic, which is 2024 proposed electric rates. Laura, I assume you'd like to take this?
We're gonna have Matt start us off. What document do you want to look at first, Matt?
Do you just want to share the rates, the scenarios?
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to refer to the rates. So we're just looking at R1, the first column with the 1850 meter charge. That's scenario 1, and then scenario 2, scenario 3 going to the right. We thought it would be a good idea to explain how we arrived at these rates presented in the 3 scenarios. I'm going to try to kind of dumb it down and explain it like I'm 5, so that hopefully everybody understands how we got to these rates. So first we take the expense numbers from the forecast that we were just approved to come up with the overall revenue requirement. This is the requirement that we think is needed to produce our target operating results, you know, between 2 and 3% return. The expense numbers are also run through an allocator from the Baker-Tilly model, which was updated. Every year we move it forward 1 year to produce, and this will assign costs to each rate class. The expense allocation combined with the revenue requirement gives us a total that needs to be collected from each rate class. And that's kind of what we went over at the last meeting, showing we had talked about the subsidy and the cross subsidy. That is where this comes into play. So the allocator also produces overall costs attributed to the energy charge and the distribution charge. These totals divided by the expected volume produce the energy and distribution charges in scenario 1. So those are, you'll see where Laura's highlighting, those are produced essentially from the Baker-Tilly model with updated numbers.
And Matt, I'm just going to reinforce here what you said, which is that they're the same for all the rate classes, the energy and distribution components, the way Baker-Tilly did it. They took, you know, all the revenue requirement from attributable to energy and divided it equally by the total load of the entire light plant so that everybody pays the same energy rate. And they did the same thing with distribution. So that you just see, if you see every rate class in the first method, scenario A, these 2 components would be the same for each rate class.
So the one thing that spits out when we do, so once we peg the meter charge, the energy charge, and the distribution charge, what spits out is the capacity charge. So we fluctuate the capacity charge to raise the amount of revenue needed to meet the revenue requirement. So that's scenario one. In scenario two, the middle column, we increase the meter charge while the energy and distribution charges remain the same. So again, the capacity charge is where you'll see the difference in it. All three of the scenarios collect the same amount of money, but we have to solve for we can only solve for one of the items. So that in this case, it's the capacity charges. In scenario three, we copy scenario two with the exception that the distribution charge is reduced instead of the capacity charge. So we are using the same capacity charges as scenario one, which are created using which were created by using a fixed distribution rates to start with. Said another way, the output from scenario one becomes an input in scenario three. And that's the main point we wanted to get across with this presentation is the capacity charges in scenario one produce the distribution charge in scenario three, essentially.
So, so scenario D is what we modeled in previous. That's what we've been doing, where we reduce the variable collection for distribution when we increase the fixed collection for distribution. So
No, in the past, Brian, we've varied the capacity charge because that's the way the model was set up. And to do it this way, we had to perform a recursive process, right? That Matt just described, that was kind of, we backdoored it a little bit. But this middle
could be
column is the way the model normally runs, but the third column is what you asked for last year. So
Yes.
this is why we twisted ourselves into gymnastic knots to be able to come up with a variable distribution. And what you'll notice is that the variable distribution, if you do it that way, people no longer pay the same distribution rate. You'll find that different rate classes pay a different, ETS doesn't change because they don't have a meter fee, so there's nothing for us to reduce. But each class would have a different distribution fee. They don't vary by much, but the point is that they would, you know, that would be a slight departure from the past. I mean, this whole exercise, really, we should have set this up a little bit. It's to say, you know, at the last meeting when we talked about rates, the light plant is the scenario A. These are the rates we proposed. And we didn't vary the meter fee from last year. And we explained why, because we thought there were some in favor of raising it and some in favor of lowering it or not raising it. So we just left it the same. But we heard loud and clear from at least one member that they wanted to see what the rates look like under a higher meter fee scenario. And we were told $20 for rate class for the residential rate class. So we ran these two different scenarios for your consideration. If you do decide to raise the meter fee, you know, these are two different ways to do it. And if you don't decide to raise the meter fee, this is what the, you know, the variable rates would be. So this is kind of what we did as a result of what happened at last meeting.
Right. Yeah, and this is when you keep going to the Baker Tilly each year, this discussion keeps coming up because the Baker Tilly adjusts the capacity as the one that changes when we change the fixed collection. And each year we have this discussion, and the idea of higher fixed fees is to ensure the operational budget for operating the light plant, the non-pass-through expenses get collected for with that higher meter charge. So changing the pass-through capacity charge doesn't logically make sense. I think that's a huge discussion, and I'd like to talk about it more. I will do it in Q1, but for today, I'm gonna just ask the board what their thoughts are. Any thoughts on the fixed collection and where the variable gets reduced? Warren,
As folks know, I'm not a fan of raising the meter charge. I don't feel strongly about it in terms of this small amount, $18.50 versus $20. All things being equal, I would prefer to keep it at $18.50. And one reason that I would think it would be nice to keep the meter charge the same is it'll make it clearer to ratepayers how next year's rates compare to this rate. And they will be able to see that they're getting a rate reduction from this year. And I suspect if they're issued something that shows the meter charge going up, they may think that actually rates are going up even though they're not.
yeah, okay. Alice, your thoughts?
So I appreciate the fact that you guys have, done some gymnastics to do the analysis for us. But looking at it this way, I don't see a net value in changing the meter fee from 18.50 to 20. It's a marginal difference for most of these rates and for most of the cost allocations. Just for simplicity and understanding where our rates come from, I would suggest we stay with the first round and keep the meter rates at 18.50. That's my proposal.
John, go ahead.
Laura, can you remind me roughly, I'm assuming that the 1850 is below the, excuse me, the fixed cost of serving customers. So effectively, if we're charging them 1850, then the fixed costs have to be recovered in these variable charges, and that creates the issue that Brian's raising, right? Is that there's a disconnect between how costs are allocated and how costs are incurred.
That's correct.
Yeah, that is my reasoning, or the reasoning of the board in the past for raising the fixed charges is, volumetric sales impact the ability for the light plant to pay for those fixed expenses. And so when we look at solar or energy efficiency, we see a negative in the sense that we reduce sales volume, we reduce collection for those fixed expenses. That means we have to play with the variable charge. But more importantly, weather has a big impact on the sales volume, degree days. And so the higher we have our fixed charge, the more we reduce that risk exposure. And this allows us to do programs that incentivize this energy transition stuff because the light plant is more secure in collecting for its operations. And that's why I don't see changing the capacity makes any sense, because the distribution should be collected through either the meter charge or through the variable distribution fee. But Baker Tilly made a model that works differently. Warren, do you have another question?
Yeah, I just make a comment. I hope folks had a chance to review the paper from Regulatory Assistance Project that I asked to be circulated around. I think that makes a pretty compelling case for not trying to recoup all fixed charges through a fixed meter charge. Other businesses don't do it that way. We shouldn't do it that way. And it's desirable to link to recover our costs through the variable electricity and distribution and capacity charges.
Yeah, if we tried to collect all of it, it'd be like $65 a person or a customer. So we're still a third or less of that. Alice.
That was actually my point. Whether, we're
Sorry.
still around the margins at $18.50 or $20, it does not meet our fixed cost allocation. Our fixed costs are much higher than we're collecting on a meter charge. which I do think argues for Warren's point. I'd like to see that paper. I don't know that I saw it. Was it recently?
Yeah.
It was
emailed
circulated,
before.
yeah. I think Dave Wood sent it.
Oh, I
around.
may have missed it. Okay, I'll take a look. Thank you.
And we've looked at it before, prior to John and Bianca.
Okay.
So I'd like oh, John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I hear what Warren and Alice are saying, but I do feel like, and it's a modest movement, but I feel like it is moving in the right direction. And I feel like, there's from a overall equity perspective, I think that's another conceivable argument that can be made regarding moving to higher fixed costs. But and I have to apologize, Warren, I have not looked at that paper. I will. But I am familiar with kind of rate making concepts and am comfortable with what I'm proposing here.
Yeah. As to the low income customers, customers that are income qualified for the rate assistance, we do about a 50% subsidy. So they would not be as impacted by this. But the people who are not on the rate assistance program because they're not income qualified may and have low volume purchases of electricity would see a net increase in their rate. So I want to get a sense, because we're split on, I know Warren doesn't want to change from the 1850 to the 20. I do, but I want to get a sense from the other three members so that we have a majority decision on this. So Bianca, you haven't shared your views yet. So what do you think? Do you think we should go with the 1850 or raise to the 20?
I'm still grappling with I think Alice's comment and Warren's comment. Well, I'm soaking it all in. I think the difference seems to be quite marginal. I'm just trying to understand. You suggested that this increase would help us achieve our greening goals. How much of an impact is that? Do you have a sense for?
This is something that it's small because the change is small.
Okay.
But if we had a $65 meter charge for all residents, then the light plant could be secure in knowing that everything but the pass-through power supply portfolio was going to be collected, whether it was, mild weather all year or whether it was extreme weather all year. And that allows the light, that's revenue decoupling, which is what happened to the investor-owned utilities in 2008. With a slightly different strategy, they have a revenue recovery kind of mechanism. And that allows, other utilities like Eversource to be neutral when it comes to solar and comes to heat pumps, because sales volume doesn't impact the profitability of their business. And the sales volume here impacts our ability to pay for these fixed charges. So this higher fixed fee reduces that exposure.
The dependence on
But yeah,
sales.
but if we went to the extreme, as Warren described, and had $65 fees, well, if you've got an older house and all you do is lighting and other such, and you're not income qualified, you'd see your bill skyrocket with a $65 monthly fee, which is unfair. And the industry of
Yeah.
utilities.
And that paper as well, what it suggested at $65, I mean, if that were the fixed fee and, that's what we all paid, I know for sure. Well, the paper made the point that then there would be indifference regarding energy efficiency, right? So then people would just, okay, I paid my flat rate and I'm just gonna,
right,
use as much as possible, and then all that time of use rates that we have, but that would be the extreme, right? I'm pretty sure we pay a lot more than $65, which I would love to get down to. That would be awesome.
Oh, well, that's just the distribution collection.
Oh, that's for distribution, right? Okay.
Yeah, so all of the energy and capacity would be on top of the 65 a month.
So if I could just, Brian, I would
Yep.
like to respond in one way to Bianca's first question, which was that raising the meter fee in general helps support green programs. And I think what you said, Brian, is true, but I will also point out that we've never not fully funded our energy efficiency and renewable
Yeah.
programs. The strategy we've taken to make sure we fully fund those is we take whatever money maybe shortfall from lower sales and we take it out of net income. That's one of the
Okay.
reasons we have net income, is to ensure that we fully fund those programs. So I just don't want to leave people with the view that somehow, we may not
That we
fully
would
fund
fall
those
short, yeah.
programs.
Yeah, I would agree
Thank
with
you.
that, Laura. We've never, we've always focused on getting the programs to happen.
Yeah.
So, Alice, where are you? Do the 1850 or 20? I'm still trying to do the straw poll.
I am interested in 1850, because I don't see a net benefit to anyone of raising the meter charge a small amount to meet a conceptual idea as opposed to funding our light plant. I don't think the light plant has, in its 140-year history, or whatever the number of years is, has really had a major problem with funding its fixed costs. We have always been able to meet the fixed costs. And the cost allocation model to me on this one is not worth it. I just assume leave it as it is.
Okay. John, your thoughts?
I'm comfortable with an increase to $20 customer charge.
All right. So, Bianca, you're the decider.
Oh my goodness, the swing vote.
It sounds like everybody has a pretty, I don't think anyone will be angry with your decision. I think we all have our views and we
Got
we all
fists
like to
outside my
go
door.
one way, but we're all friendly.
I see both sides this is an instance where I really just, it's marginal and I generally, the benefits I don't fully understand, but I don't feel like it's a lot anyway. I think I'm gonna vote to just the 1850. I just don't, it's a marginal uptick, which is
Well,
not bad, but I also don't fully understand what the benefit would be. So I'll vote conservatively.
okay. Understood. I don't really, I would like to see 20, but it seems like 3 out of 5 would like to stay where we are. So Laura, we can have that going forward, that we're going to stay with the 1850, which means that the first column there, which is the January 1st, 2024, those are the proposed rates, because if we don't change the meter fee, the C and D columns go away. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right.
So we will prepare tariff sheets for your consideration at the December 13th meeting that reflect this column 1 for each of the rate classes. So the meter fees will stay the same as to what they were in 2023.
Right.
And then
We got one more thing that I know we're going to have to argue on.
well, Matt, would you mind reviewing now the provision for rate refund, and let's see if we can get some board consensus on what direction they want to go with that.
Sure. So at the last meeting, we presented rates, but we also talked about a negative PCA of $0.015 to finally kind of return the big chunk of money that we have sitting in the provision for rate refund. The rates that were just shown by Laura do not include that negative penny, or that negative $0.015. At the last meeting, I think Brian had brought up how, this is going to probably produce pretty good rate shock for customers, which is absolutely true. It's going to be a a decent decrease in 2024, and then it's likely to jump way back up in 2025 because of new debt that we're going to be adding on, as well as taking away that negative PCA most likely. So I would we've been trying to get the provision for rate refund down to a minimal level, so, and kind of keep kind of peg it there wherever our whatever amount we determine we want to keep it at, we want to peg it kind of in that so that it stays level and we're not having these big jumps in provision for rate refund every year. But I understand also the need to not produce rate shock. So I guess the question for the board is, are you guys okay with the negative PCA, and what time period would you like to see that cover?
So this graphic may help you. We used it at the last meeting, and what it shows is that this is R1 rate class. Here's what the combined volumetric rate is. It doesn't include the meter fee. Okay, but the volumetric rate for tier 1 is currently 19.12 cents. If we just go with the revenue requirement for 2024, it goes down slightly. It doesn't really change much at all. However, if we do put in the full penny and a half, in which gives back the money in 1 year, the rates would fall to 17.6 cents. You don't need to bother with the last two columns because those were to show you if we didn't do the cross allocation between residential and commercial, that's what the residential rates would look like. But we decided not to do that, so you can ignore those. And this just shows what each rate class would pay with the PCA and without it. And I think Brian had a really good point that, okay, so in 2024, if we drop the rates down and we deplete that excess fund that gives back to customers, we won't have any more funds to give back to customers in 2025, plus we'll have new debt. So the rates will go back up right about the same time that we're talking about instituting time of use. So are people going to associate, a big rate increase between 24 and 25 with time of use and the new meters and get a negative, view on both those projects when in fact they're not really the cause of the increase?
Yeah, I would prefer to see us delay the PCA and address it next year when we take on that debt to offset it. But your concern at the last meeting was holding on to it for that additional year. So I want to hear from you on your thoughts, Matt and Laura, about not doing a PCA and how that would affect us.
I mean, I think it's a policy call, in my opinion. I'll let Matt speak for himself. But it's really something the board, needs to decide. There's nothing wrong, I don't think, with either choice. It's just a matter of overall, policy, tone setting, and we're not going to affect the, financial wherewithal of the light plant in any way. I mean, it's actually going to be somewhat positive because it will provide additional cash to be used, as working capital during the year. But yeah, I think it's a policy call. Matt, do you have a different view?
No, it all comes down, we talk about a lot of what we're talking about is fairness, and this provision for rate refund was built on years past, customers paying years past extra for purchase power. And so if you lived in Concord a few years ago, paid into that, and then moved away, you didn't get any benefit from that extra paying. So it's really just comes down to fairness. We shouldn't have that big of a provision for rate refund built up, because it's not fair to some of those customers in the past.
John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Matt, that's a good point. I guess I would like to echo one of the points that Brian made. I do think that there's a reasonable risk when we do implement time of use rates that customers are going to respond to potentially pretty significant changes in rates. And I think that, having a lower volumetric rate at that time might help in terms of mitigating some of the problems that could result.
Alice, Bianca, Warren, do any of you have other thoughts on this?
I thought, so we discussed this last time, and at the last meeting, what I heard was that the PCA, we could not, under legal terms, wait, because it was a regulatory, or I don't know if it was regulatory, but there were some guidelines about it that this must be paid out. And that there was no option to smooth it. So that would be my
I think it was more precedent than it
Okay.
was
regulation.
legal.
Okay.
Matt, do you know if there's any legal thing about the PCA or Laura?
I'm not aware of anything that requires us to pay it back under a certain time period.
Okay.
I think it comes down to, like everything, there's good and there's bad. I mean, I think on the one hand, it's noble and it's probably the right thing to do to return money as contemporaneously as possible to when it was incurred. But on the other hand, you all are also trying to achieve other policy objectives, right? You're trying to launch time of use, so that it's widely accepted by people. You're trying to maintain the financial stability of the light plant and rate continuity. I mean, rate continuity is another principle that we try to adhere to. So, there's competing benefits and disbenefits here, and you have to weigh them. That's why I say I think it's more of a policy decision.
Yeah. Alice.
So my thoughts on this are that if we have the opportunity to do so, I would like to see extending the return on that over 2 years. When we go into a time of use rates, it will be a considerable rate shock for everyone because we're using it as an opt-out methodology for applying the time of use rates. And so as we have done with other debt, this is obviously not debt, but as we have done with debt, we create funds that will help smooth that rate shock over a long period. And I can see a benefit to doing that in this case as a policy of our board to say, we could return a great deal of money to our citizens with this, by applying it all in 1 year. But if we stretch it over a couple of years, then we're going to create a smoother rate transition from where we are today to a time of use rate structure, which will be considerably different. So my vote would be to stretch it over, extend as if we're creating a stabilization fund. So I think how the terminology, maybe Matt knows, to help ratepayers over the longer term.
That's yes. The stabilization fund is a good explanation, but the PCA essentially is kind of a stabilization fund for errors in over collection versus under collection.
Well, because it's a forecasted amount, we were
Right.
collecting what we thought the cost of energy would be, and it deeply fluctuates from year to year. Sometimes we guess well, and sometimes we guess a little off.
And the Ukraine war did not make guessing easy.
Right.
So, Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think I'm definitely not in favor of returning it all in the coming year. Whether we defer it all for the following year or do as Alice suggests and spread it out over a couple of years, I'm not sure about. I could go either way with that. In either case, our intention is to return the money to ratepayers. We're not saying we're taking this money and spending it on a big party or, building a monument to rate collection or something like that. We're intending to return the money to ratepayers. Is just a question of the timing of it. And given to what Laura was suggesting about the fact that a goal has also been to maintain relatively stable rates to the extent to which we can do it, that suggests we should return this money at a time that allows us to maintain stable rates.
Yep. Yeah, and I wanted other people to share their opinions before I came down and said what I definitively thought, but I feel with this PCA that we should time the using this PCA with either the debt or the time of use, because we want to mitigate the shock of the debt, and we also want to make sure that the time of use is well received, because we know even if we do time of use perfectly, that we're going to get a lot of people calling, and you know, Carol's going to get busy because it's change, it's different. Softening that change with a PCA, I'd be very in favor for. Bianca, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just, what I think what we have here is maybe, some other issues that we're trying to solve with this one-time payment. Why is it that there needs to be such a rate shock with the time of use? And why can't we smooth the time of use out over time? Like, for example, maybe the first year, make it not so much of a difference between the night rate and the day rate. And then, you know, maybe put it in over time, increase the spread between the day and night rate over time, so that the shock, there isn't a sudden shock, and that people can get used to doing their laundry at night, etc.
I think the shock is simply going from a flat rate structure to any time of use. I don't think it's the amount, because it should be neutral in the amount it collects, in either case. So, and additionally, this board likes to make plans where we kind of we say we're going to do things over multiple years as a transition. And as someone who's watched this board for 10 years, rarely do we ever follow those plans. You know, for example, it was set that we would have a plan that we would continually raise the meter charge to $25, and we do it in increments of $1.50 to $2 every year. It doesn't happen. So I wouldn't want to add to the complexity of the time of use to say, oh, we're going to transition the amounts in time of use over time. It's just, I don't think that's in the capacity of us to do that well.
Okay,
it's a
I'll
great
just-
concept, but I don't think we can.
so I would let that, you brought something up that's really important, Brian. I mean,
Yeah.
that goes back to the question when I voted to, you know, keep it at 1850. I didn't understand even where the conversation started. You know,
Right.
there was no layup to, we talk about the Groundhog Day effect, right? So, I mean, it was like, okay, we're looking at this policy change, but there was no, I think if you had said to, or if it was, had been presented to me, and I'm assuming maybe to John or somebody else here, the new people, to say like, listen, this was the plan 5 years ago, that we would increase this rate every year. And this is why we started this plan, but it was just to vote cold on, do we raise it to $20 from 1850 with no background, is difficult, right? I didn't see that in the materials either.
And I could go, and you're absolutely right. There should be some kind of document, but that's more of a governance question. I could give you examples in the minutes of times where we made this transition plan and times where we said we're not following a transition plan, because boards change over time, situations change over time, and we need that flexibility to adjust. So I would like to have seen us keep with the plan on that one, but that's okay. This is the board we have today. This is the decision we made today. But yeah, when we talk about doing things over multiple years, I've seen that we don't tend to follow it. We tend to look at it each year and adjust.
Well, I think it's also the voting, right? I mean, and I'm happy to dig my, get my hands dirty with this and help out. But when we vote, if we voted on, instead of for this year, if we vote on the multiple year plan, then it sets things in motion. So rather than voting on keeping it at 1850 to 20, or we vote on, we're going to do this over 5 years, and this is the it's not for this year. We do it for a multi-year, with a multi-year view. we could do that for time of use, so that when we vote on it, we vote on the rate, and we preset the increases or the spread between day and night at the time that we're voting on it for a certain period of time, whether it be a year or 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah, I
Maybe
understand.
we can just change the voting structure to, to a multi-year, rather than a year.
Yeah. I see a bunch of hands going up. So, Alice, do you mind if I go to Laura first as
Sure.
the
Yep.
rate
Yep.
guru?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just wanted to mention one potential downside, Bianca, to gradualism with respect to the time of use. I mean, I think on the one hand, you're absolutely right. You do want to try to avoid rate shock, but we're also trying to institute behavioral modification. If we do it in very gradual steps, we might not, people might, when it first comes out, people might say, there's not very much difference between night and day. I'm not going to alter my behavior. And then even though over time, as that increases, they may have gotten into a pattern, right?
Yeah.
Of not paying attention to it. Whereas if we
People
come
rarely
out and it's a,
reassess.
it's a bigger difference, people might then respond economically and then just be in the habit of doing that. So I think, it's again, one of those policy things where you're right,
Yeah.
gradualism's good, but on the other hand, we want the behavioral modification. And what's the best way to achieve that?
I'm on board with that too. I don't, but the reason I even brought it up was because it seems like the vote on the PCA was predicated on gradualism for the TOU. So if we're talking about, if we're not going to pay back, give the money back to the ratepayer because we want more gradualism on the time of use, then let's just do gradualism on time of use and still just pay back the ratepayer now, I'm just trying to separate the issues so we don't conflate everything.
Yeah, I think the idea, because if you look at the rate structure prior to TOU and the rate structure for TOU, it should be revenue neutral. But if we implement the PCA at that same time, it won't be. The TOU will be less. So that was the thinking. Rather than gradualism, it would be, let's do the cent-and-a-half reduction when we implement time of use. And then when you look backwards at your bill, everyone see your time of use bill will be lower. That was my thinking anyway. Does that make sense?
But do you want the time of but it's still a little bit of smoke and mirrors, because then the following it's the same thing, right? So we're just postponing dealing with whatever the real problem is, right? So it's
and also rates will go up when we add on the middle school solar debt. So putting the PCA to counter that will blunt that first year of that debt load to ratepayers, and that's a good reason. That coincidentally will time with time of use.
But Brian, to your point about, the board has trouble making decisions that, are gradual or over time, this goes to this paying back the ratepayer on the PCA over time. Is that going to be then a problem?
Yeah, so that's
Can I jump in?
yeah, go ahead, Warren.
Yeah, I think there are two issues here. There are two things that are going to change in the following year. One is we're going to move to time of use rate. And two, we're going to have this significant additional debt, which is going to lead to the need for more revenue. Those are two separate factors.
Yeah.
And the reason to delay the PCA rebates for folks has nothing to do with the fact that we're moving to time of use. It really is about avoiding a significant sticker shock from the debt for the middle school.
Yeah.
And the reason it gets confused with time of use, and the reason why now I would argue for not doing the 2-year approach that Alice proposed previously and delaying all the PCA to later, is if we don't do that, people are going to get confused and think that their overall electric bills are going up under time of use because of the fact that we moved to time of use. And the real reason their electric bills will go up is because of this increased debt load. And so by delaying the PCA, it means that there won't be as much sticker shock from the debt load. That's what we're really doing. And we're trying to prevent people from getting confused to thinking that it was time of use that was causing electric bills to go up.
That is a great summary. Thank you. I'd like to, because we're running out of time. We got 10 minutes left, and I know one of the rates I'm gonna have to talk about. But can I get a sense from each of you? Do we want to delay the PCA to come on when the debt load comes on? Warren, do you think that's
Yes, I want to delay.
all right? Alice?
I would not delay. I could
Okay.
see a smoothing it, but not delay until we have a debt. I think if we want to create a system and add something as a different rate to help us build a fund, a stabilization fund, then we should do that.
Okay.
And if what our concern is the debt, then we should create the way to collect a debt stabilization fund. The PCA is obligated to be returned to our ratepayers because they've already paid for something that didn't cost that much.
Yeah.
So I would say give it back over a couple of years.
Okay. John?
I'm fine with, as Warren suggested, basically pushing it to next year recovery, or the distribution to next year to mitigate the rate impact.
And Bianca, do you have a feeling on this? Would you like to delay, transition, or do the full $0.015 this year?
I like dealing with issues, not conflating them, and so I would just pay the full $0.015 this year,
Yeah.
and we can deal with. I think we have plenty of money in a whole bunch of other pockets to smooth out and deal with the debt load. So yeah, I would pay back the $0.015.
So I agree with Warren and John that we match the PCA with the debt load. And I do like Alice's idea of a transition. So hopefully, so I think with three of us kind of agreeing to delay to match it with debt, that's what we'll do. But I'd like to ask Laura and Matt, when the debt comes on and we have a PCA to match that, can you help us kind of smooth the year over year of that debt burden hitting rates, utilizing the PCA as a stabilization fund? Can you look into the math on that and let us know your thoughts when you bring the next PCA to us? Laura, was that crazy, or does that make sense?
Let me just repeat back so I make sure that we're clear on what the board just voted on. So what we're saying is we're not going to put any PCA on this year, meaning 2024. And we are going to monitor the impact of the debt and the timing, and utilize these funds to help smooth the transition to the extent that we are going to experience higher rates because of the debt load. Now, I will just mention the big elephant in the room here is, of course, we have no idea what power prices are going to do in 2025.
Yeah.
So we may do all our best to smooth our distribution expenses, but we have no control over what the power supply is going to be. And obviously that gets passed on to consumers. So I just don't want us to be lulled into a false sense that we have complete control over these rates and we know exactly where they're going to go.
Yeah, it will be, I think the decision today is to delay this discussion for when the debt load hits, and we'll deal with it there. Because the Groundhog Day effect will come into place, and we'll deal with this anew.
You good with that, Matt?
Yep.
Okay.
So Laura, do you want to try to help us finish the rate discussion in 5 minutes and
Yes.
talk
So
about EPS?
the other big open question in our mind is what you want to do about the reduced second meter fee. There's a lot of discussion about that, and I believe where the board ended up probably 2 meetings ago was accepting the light plant's recommendation to do what other utilities do to help address the specific concerns of electric vehicle owners about a second meter fee for their second meter. And they produce electric vehicle charging rates rather than trying to address second meter fees for all circumstances, because the board agreed that most of the inquiries it's been getting with regard to being unhappy with the second meter fee were in fact coming from electric vehicle owners who were using that second meter for charging. So we need to understand for December 13th, do you want to move forward with the electric vehicle charging rate that was presented? And in combination with a new rate, which it would be a new tariff, we would also change the time of use rate, which currently says if you're going to go on time of use and it's a second meter, then the meter fee gets waived entirely. So we create a new electric vehicle rate that had a $6.50 meter charge. We would change the free language in the time of use to also be $6.50, so we were consistent whether or not a vehicle chose the TOU rate to charge their car under or the R1 rate to do their car under. So that's what the light plant proposed. There was discussion and dissent that was the right approach. And so we just need to understand where the board is right now with regard to the second meter fee issue.
I don't think we can do that in 3 minutes. I would like to meet with you and prepare and put it as a topic for our next meeting. I don't think the discussion we had last time did not go well, and I don't think we can clarify that here.
Well, just so you understand, it means that there will be no meter change for second meters in the January 1st general rate change. I mean, we will not have time to prepare it. So if it doesn't get decided here, it gets kicked to next year.
Yeah, so I don't think that's true. I think we can figure it out. I just want to meet with you directly to go over all of this because it is going to be a half an hour discussion.
I know, but what I'm saying is the December 13th is the drop dead date to get January 1st rates implemented. The light plant can't be making tariffs at Christmas and try to get them implemented with the DPU for January 1st. It's just, we can't administratively do it. So I'm warning you in advance, that if it doesn't get decided today, it is going to get kicked after the first of the year.
Yeah, I met with Dave and talked to him about this, and all right, we'll have to do it. We can't talk about it now. I need you to move on to the rest of the rates so that we can get that discussion done before people have to leave.
That's it. That's all I have.
ETS is a distribution fee of less than a penny when we're charging 6 cents for distribution. We've talked about transitioning to a off-peak price, but we're not doing it. Again, this is the Groundhog Day, the plan of multi-year transitions that we don't follow through on and we rediscuss every year.
So
If we go to time of use, we're going to have to, they're either going to get a 5 cent or 6 cent shock in their cost of ETS energy by being off peak, or we're going to have to continue the ETS rate with time of use.
And the board has discussed, we brought up ETS as a rate topic in 2023. No resolution was made at the meeting. What the light plant proposed for the ETS rate was an increase of 5%.
I have no recollection of a 5% decision.
No, the light plant proposed that the ETS rate would increase by 5%.
So we talked about this back mid-year about, does ETS, by moving sales volume to the middle of the night, save us money on rates. And you did the analysis of comparing it to pricing, and determined that it actually does not save us any money by having this load, but to have this load uncontrolled would be detrimental. So it's neutral at best, based on the off-peak price. So why do we keep making small changes? I mean, it's proposed at 368% increase. Well, that increase is based on a very low value. It should be 1,000 or over 1,000%, because we got to get that price to 6 cents.
So the price only has to get to 6 cents, Brian, if the board decides to not provide a special rate for ETS in the future and to have them transition to TOU. When that discussion happened, there was no board consensus. There was no board vote to do that. So I wouldn't assume that that's going to happen unless the board votes to do that. And the reason the rates were proposed the way they were is so that the overall rate paid by ETS would go from 9.155 cents to 9.613 cents, which is a 5% increase on the overall rate. And again, to Bianca's point of rate shock, do you want to ask the ETS people to pay 20% more from year to year, 50% more? I mean, what is reasonable? So the light plant came forward with this proposal, and you get to decide what to do with it, you as a board.
So we've had these discussions early in the year. We're out of time to discuss this topic, but I want to get from the board a sense of, should ETS pay the cost of operating the light plant, or should it be exempt from that cost for some special reason? Where are we going with this rate?
With a limited time left, Brian, I would suggest that the query you make to the board is whether or not they want to adopt this rate proposal change, or whether they want to do something different. Because if the board takes no vote on this today, it's going to stay the same as the 1123 rate. We won't have, the staff will not have the board direction on what to put the rate to, and therefore we'll have to leave it the same.
We've had this argument every November for as long as I've been on the board. So Alice, you've been around for most of those. What is your thought on ETS? Should it be paying full distribution eventually, or should we continue to have other ratepayers subsidize the technology after getting big rebates 10 years ago? I'm very on one side of this, so I apologize, but yeah, your thoughts. Oh, I think you're muted.
I can hear your viewpoint loud and clear. I think we all do.
Apologies.
So I don't want to get into a debate at 5 after 9 when we're trying to end the conversation. I think that I don't know what I think on it. We were talking about I think in the order of 150 customers. Is that right? Yeah, yep. We're talking about a rate change that will affect 150 people in our community. We have heard from some people who are on ETS. They were prepared to pay somewhat more, understanding that there were additional costs to running the light plant. So, I personally, I don't know where I fall on this one. I have to say, I don't have, I don't know. We're not, I think 5% is a marginal change.
It's not.
It doesn't mean it's not a marginal change. Is that what you're saying?
It's way too small. I mean, we've got to.
That's what I'm saying. It's a marginal change. Yeah. Does it get us anything in either policy or goodwill? We're talking about people who have had an extremely favorable rate for a very long period of time because it was an incentive program from the light plant.
Yeah.
We encouraged people to install ETS. We facilitated the installations of ETS. And now we're owning the debt or the change in the market rates that cost the plant more money.
And these units consume a lot of electricity. So we may have 140, 150 customers, but each customer is consuming thousands of kilowatts during the winter. And this is, the distribution is to pay for the operations of the light plant. They're only paying the energy to pass through. And that's less than or maybe 1 penny of distribution. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the views of other people on the board. So Alice, could you summarize? Would you be against a 1 or 2 cent raise to the distribution?
I would not be opposed to 1% or maybe 2%.
Oh, one.
I don't see a benefit. Right now, Laura, can you remind me what the proposal from, I honestly defer to Laura, who has spent decades in this line of work in understanding and the economics and the evaluation over a long period of time on the debt load and what our costs of the light plant are. And I can't actually recall from the conversation what the proposal was from the light plant. I can pull it up probably, but
Okay, no, can you see this chart in front of you?
Yes.
oh, there. Oh, I'm sorry. This
So-
got covered by something else on my screen. Yep.
The current rate is 9.155 cents per kilowatt hour, which is
Yep.
made up of the full energy fee plus a very small contribution to distribution. The proposal was to raise their total rate to 0.09613 cents, which is a increase of 5%. So you can vote to accept this proposal. You can vote to increase this by, any amount you deem fit. We just need direction on which way the board's going to go so that we can prepare the tariff sheets for next meeting.
And
I'm not opposed to what was proposed. It's still a small increase. It gets us a little closer,
but
5%.
yeah. So right now you're talking in percentages. I have requested a 2 cent increase in distribution collection, which would be a very, very large percentage change. I don't know what that percentage is, but it's not 6 or 7. It's significant. Bianca, I'm a little too polarized on this one.
No, I just wanted to weigh in and say that I support your views, Brian. I do, I'm new to the board, but I do soak in everything that that Laura and the team provide. And I do clearly recall, Laura, I don't forget if it was in July or when it was, that she gave a full analysis of ETS, and that there was really no benefit to it, but a potential large cost if they were not controlled. But that we are not, that the rates that they're getting is not beneficial, that we get nothing out of it, basically. So I fully support, and I'm guessing that they've already had a subsidy with this, right? That this has all been paid over time, that these are longstanding devices. It's not like there's any impending, not like anyone took out any debt to put them in. So I would say let's normalize the rates to everything else.
Warren?
Yeah, I am comfortable with a somewhat higher rate increase this year. That 5% increase is a little deceptive because that's only 5% to their distribution. It's not 5% to their overall electric bill.
No, it is 5% to the overall electric rate.
It is 5% to the.
It's 300 and something percent of the distribution rate and 5%.
Oh, okay, so it would be 5% to the electric bill. Okay. I would be comfortable with that. I would be comfortable with something higher, potentially like 10%. But I would say when it comes to us switching to time of use rate, I would remain in favor of having a separate ETS rate, because I don't think it's fair to these customers to have talked them into purchasing a system that will then be very unfavorable in a time of use environment.
So the last ETS installation was prior to 2014.
Yeah.
And they haven't been paying distribution or very much
Yeah.
distribution
Yeah,
for a decade. So these systems are eventually going to need replacement. I'm hoping we're at that stage now, because that was the only way I see this rate discussion becoming mute. Because we want to avoid rate shock. We don't want to penalize customers, but our continued delay in raising this just pushes off that need to shock them.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't particularly want to decide on the future, what we're doing on the time of use rate. I just wanted to go on the record in terms of saying I would be comfortable with a somewhat higher short-term increase this year, but I did not want that to be perceived as saying that I agree with going to eliminate the ETS rate altogether in the following year.
Okay.
So Warren, can you be specific about your proposal for a higher percentage increase?
I don't know, I maybe instead of 5%, go to 10%, or go to a 1 cent increase for this year. I don't know. I don't, I'm also comfortable with just the 5% too. I don't have strong views about it. It's a confusing issue to me.
All right. We're well over time. I want to get John's thoughts on ETS and the direction of this rate.
Yeah, I'm fine with a 10% increase. I have to say I am sympathetic to the ETS customers, because essentially they've made a capital investment, and I think that if the light plant was advocating and providing support for that, we need to be careful in terms of any actions we take where they've made a decision based on a certain understanding, and they're now going to be penalized by a dramatic change in rates. But I would be comfortable with a 10% increase in rates.
Okay, so I'm very biased here, but I think I want the highest increase in rates being 2 cents added to distribution. The lowest increase I've heard is 10% instead of the 5%. Warren had said 1% at some point, and all the members agree that it should be more, but we're all afraid to shock these customers with a really dramatic increase like I'm asking for. So that's the guidance I have for you, Laura. Very
So
non-specific.
I'm sorry, but I need more. I need a specific level so that we can bring you a tear sheet.
All
So
right.
I can make a motion, and you can decide if you go with it or not. Of that, because I think we
Okay.
don't know. We're bickering between no percent, 5%, 10%, 300%. So I'm just going to make a motion. If it doesn't pass, we'll go on to something else. So what?
What number? Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
What percentage are you gonna pick? That's what I'm curious.
I move that we accept a rate increase for the ETS customers of 5% based on the economic analysis presented by careful consideration by the light. And recommended to this board.
So you're accepting the rate as proposed.
Yep.
I second
Proposed
that.
by the light plant.
All right. So Bianca seconds. Alice,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
I'm a definite no. All right. All right. We'll continue in action. Sorry.
Wait, I'm confused, Brian. I thought this was what you wanted. This is a rate increase, right? Oh, you just wanted a higher one? Is
We
that
want
what-
a bigger rate increase.
Oh,
I
I
want
see.
like a
Okay.
50% increase. So I would like 2 cents.
We can go on and debate
talking
this,
about
but let's,
total. All right, we're going to end the meeting. And I will summarize my thoughts and send a big email to everybody because that's
Do we have to read it is the question.
Well, I hope you would.
We,
All right. Can I get a motion, Alice, to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Second,
Second, and thank you, everyone. John,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Bianca,
yes.
and Alice.
Yes,
I agree as well. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.
thank you.